DBT, Emotion Regulation 8. In this session, we're going to continue looking at the skills that reduce our vulnerability to emotional mind. We're going to look at build mastery and cope ahead. So firstly, let's look at what mastery actually is. Mastery is doing things that make you feel competent, self-confident, in control and capable of mastering things. Human babies have a real tendency to increase mastery, but this can be lost over time if our attempts to increase mastery are not reinforced. So why do you think we build mastery? Well, doing things to build mastery is an important component of the two most effective treatments for depression: cognitive therapy and behavioural activation. Building a sense of confidence and competence makes a person more resistant to depression and other negative emotions. Building mastery usually requires doing something that's a little bit hard or challenging. The idea is to generate a sense of accomplishment, and then over time a series of accomplishments leads to a more positive self-concept, higher self-esteem, and an overall greater level of happiness. So let's think about how we build mastery. We should be trying to do at least one thing each day to build a sense of accomplishment. We should plan for success, not failure, and do something difficult but possible. Lives of failure are lives where expectations are too high. For example, a person who's just starting to work out shouldn't attempt to run 5 miles the first day just because they heard that a person who's in good shape can do that. It's important you try to gradually increase the difficulty over time. Once you've mastered the first task, try and do something a little bit more difficult each time. However, if any task is too difficult at first, do something a little easier next time. Remember to look for a challenge. Really emphasise very small things that can promote a feeling of accomplishment. For example, cooking a meal for yourself from a new recipe, or learning how to light a campfire, or going to an exercise class for the first time. Perhaps make a list of things that could make you feel a sense of mastery. The next skill is coping ahead. Coping ahead is figuring out which situations are likely to cause you trouble, and then not only planning ahead how to cope with those expected difficulties, but also imagining being in the situation and coping effectively. There's a large amount of research suggesting that we can learn new skills simply by imagining and practicing a new skillful behaviour in our heads. This is true for all sorts of skills, from sports to interpersonal skills as well. As it turns out, imagining an activity fires many of the same brain regions as actually engaging in that activity does. Not only does coping ahead help us in planning how to deal with emotionally provocative situations, but it also increases the likelihood that we will more automatically respond with the skillful consequence of behaviours we've practiced. Now let's think about when we could use cope ahead. So you could use cope ahead in any situation coming up where you feel that there's a threat or you feel afraid, or when you know your emotions might get so high that you'll forget to use skills, or in a new situation where you're unsure of your skills and perhaps your insecurity might make you have an emotional reaction that makes it very difficult for you to manage the situation effectively, or maybe when you have difficult urges like to run away or hit someone or say yes to using alcohol or drugs which would get in the way of skillful behaviour if you followed them. So let's think about how we cope ahead. First of all, you need to describe a problem situation for which you're worried about coping well. It's important to check the facts and to be specific in describing the situation. Name the emotions and urges that are likely to interfere with you using your skills. Then you need to decide what coping or problem-solving skills you want to use in the situation. Be specific and write out in detail how you'll cope with the situation and with your emotions and your action urges. Then imagine the situation in your mind as vividly as possible. Be sure to imagine yourself in the situation, not watching the situation. And also make sure you're rehearsing in the present tense, not in the future or the past. Then rehearse in your mind coping effectively. Rehearse exactly what you could do to cope effectively, including rehearsing your actions, your thoughts, what you say, and how to say it. Rehearse coping with your most feared catastrophe. It's then really important that you practice relaxation after rehearsing. The next set of skills we're looking at today in order to reduce our vulnerability to emotional mind are the please skills. Taking care of your mind by taking care of your body. An out of balance body increases vulnerability to negative emotions and emotional mind. Taking care of your body can increase your emotional resilience. The first skill is treating physical illness. Being ill really lowers our resistance to negative emotions. The healthier you become, the better able you'll be to regulate your emotions. Lots of people are really scared of going to see physicians or don't have the behavioural regulation to get themselves to doctor's appointments. Others don't have the self-regulation to take prescribed medications. So let's think about you. Do you have a physical illness that needs to be tended to? Do you have medication or treatments prescribed for you that you aren't taking or doing? Perhaps think about illnesses that you've had in the past. What keeps you from treating them? Maybe you're embarrassed about the problem, or you have a lack of assertion skills, lack of money, problems with self-regulation, or fear of medical treatment, or maybe even previous negative experiences of seeking medical care. So just take some time to think about this and see what it would take for you to take care of your physical needs. The next skill is balanced eating. So think about how well you eat. Do you eat too much or too little? Try to eat the amounts and kinds of foods that help you feel good. Not too much or too little, but everything in moderation. Eating too little can mean that your body goes into starvation mode, burning food more slowly and trying to protect itself from starving. Try to stay away from food that makes you feel overly emotional. Think about what foods make you feel good, calm, and energized, and perhaps then think about what foods make you feel bad. How does eating a lot of sugar or caffeine, for example, make you feel? So the key here is to eat foods that are healthy and make you feel good. The next skill is avoiding mood-altering substances. Alcohol and drugs, like certain foods, can lower our resistance to negative emotions. Unsurprisingly enough, mood-altering substances alter our moves. This is why it's not a good idea to drink alcohol or use drugs before a job interview, or before or during other events where behavioural and emotional control is very important. Perhaps think about some times where it's been important for you not to use alcohol or drugs. The S in please stands for balanced sleep. Try to get the amount of sleep that helps you feel good, not too much or too little. Usually for most people this is between 7 and 9 hours per night, but some people do fine on 5 or 6, and others prefer 9 or 10. Some people need to nap during the day, so just learn to plan your schedule so you get the right amount you need. It's important you keep to a consistent sleep schedule, especially if you're having difficulty sleeping. Then the last skill is exercise. So regular exercise, besides being good for your heart, your lungs, your muscles and your bones, can stimulate chemicals in your brain called endorphins, which are natural antidepressants. We're talking about aerobic exercise here, the kind that makes you out of breath. A regular exercise schedule can build mastery as well. Try to do some sort of exercise 5 to 7 days per week, whether this is going for a walk and getting your heart rate up, or going to an exercise class. Just try to build up to 20 minutes of exercise each time. So today we've covered some more skills in our module on reducing vulnerability to emotional mind. In the next session we'll be looking at managing really difficult emotions.